You ever wonder how much water you should be drinking? What type of mathematical formula do I have to solve in order to figure out what's sufficient to make sure my body is hydrated? Well, the latest research says that you should take your body weight, half that, and drink that in ounces. And that's a pretty good place to start. However, before you go chugging away on a bunch of water, I want you to consider a few things. So now that you know how much water you should be drinking, the next question is, what type of water should you be drinking? Well, there's several types. There's drinking water, there's distilled water, there's purified water, and there's spring water. And there's another type which we're going to consider a bit later, but first let's go over these four. The first is drinking water, and it's essentially that. It's intended for drinking. It usually comes from a municipal source, and it is marketed as safe for human consumption. It usually contains things like fluoride, which is used to clean the water, and there's some debate around this. Government agencies like the FDA deem it safe. However, there are some folks who prescribe more to a natural way of living, considering like alternative health doctors who have shown that fluoride can create challenges within the body. And so when it comes to drinking water, drink at your own risk. Again, it's a marketed water, but it's not necessarily in its purest form. Next, we have distilled water. Now, distilled water is a type of purified water. It has gone through an extreme process to strip it of everything, including chemicals and also its minerals. Now, here's the thing to note. While humans can drink it, you might find that if you rely distinctly on distilled water to parch your thirst, you might find yourself being more thirsty. And here's why. It lacks the vital minerals that your body needs to survive. And so oftentimes when you're thirsty, it's not that your body wants an internal shower. It's more so that your body wants the minerals that come from drinking that water. Now, here's what distilled water can work very well for. If you are making tea, having distilled water can actually be pretty excellent because tea or any herb is infusing itself into the water. If the water is already filled with minerals, there may not be a lot of room for what that tea or that herb is also trying to infuse into the water. So if you think about distilled water as sort of an empty water that allows you to then put into it what you want it to, there's space for that. So when I'm making herbal teas, I will use distilled waters because I'm transferring the properties of the herbs into the water. Another thing to consider is that if you use appliances like kettles, a steamer, etc., that use water to make it function, if you use distilled water, you run a lower risk of clogging up and getting a mineral buildup in that particular appliance because there's no minerals in the water. And so distilled water can work great for making tea or for any appliances that rely on water for it to operate efficiently. The next is purified water. Purified water is any water that has gone through a process to have the contaminants removed. This includes distillation, deionization, reverse osmosis, and carbon filtration. Now, here's the thing. Because it's removed the contaminants, then sure, it could be safer for human consumption. But remember, your body also needs the minerals, and that's often removed as well. And so it says purified, and I want you guys to remember that there's a difference between marketing and then there's a difference between nature. There's what nature intended you to consume, and there's what marketers would hope that you'd consume so you can secure their bottom line, which is profit. So when we see words and labels like purified, natural, just bring more of a critical lens and a bit more of label literacy when you are choosing the water, and think to yourself, while this might not contaminate me and kill me over, will it also provide the nutrients that my body needs? And then next we have spring water. Now, spring water sounds amazing, right? When you think about spring water, you might often envision some local spring, either from a river or maybe from a mountain, and it being bottled directly at the source. And oftentimes when you buy spring water, it says that that's the case. However, there's a recent study from the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, that denotes otherwise. Sometimes the source of that water is a complete mystery. So you're hoping it's spring water and not water that they got from the tap and then put a picture of a mountain with fresh water running down it onto the label and sold it as spring water. So while a lot of bottled water is labeled as spring water, it's a really good idea to do some research to ensure that is the water that you think it is. So we've talked about distilled, we've talked about drinking water, we've talked about purified water, and we've talked about spring water. Now let's talk about living water. Living water, my friends, is a water that still has its natural chemical structure intact. When the molecular structure of the water is still intact, it transfers energy into the human cells more efficiently than water that has been altered or treated by unnatural treatments, filtration, piping, or even sometimes the bottling process. And so when I think about living water, I think about water that is as close to the source as possible. Now, I know if you live in a city, it's going to be challenging to get that because you're often living in a place where the streams, the river sources have either been contaminated or you just don't live close to them. I had an experience living in Peru for a little bit, and when I was in Peru, I got an opportunity to drink directly from the river. And what was amazing was that I only had to drink a little bit to get hydrated. Whereas when I am in the city and I buy bottled water, I often have to drink the entire bottle in order for my body to feel some degree of relief from thirst. And this is because when the water is coming from the source, one, it is alive. Alive means it's not sitting in a vat, rather, it is constantly moving. And so water is intended to move. If you've ever seen water sitting still, it begins to rot. It begins to turn rank. It begins to go foul. It's no longer livable for the things that live in water, nor is it drinkable or consumable for humans like us. And so water needs to move. That's what keeps it recycling and restoring itself, and that's what makes it living. In addition to that, living water has all the minerals that it needs to sustain itself, including the things that live in it and us who drink it. And so I found this company, Splendor, and I've been drinking their water now for about 3 years. I'm not one to promote a lot of brands and products. However, when I find something that works, I want to share it. And so Splendor is a living water. It is bottled at the source in Ecuador. And what's very interesting about this is that it comes from an ancient volcano. And so it is filled with vital minerals that our body needs. But also the company itself is a very conscious company. And they really take intentional thought about how they process this water, which includes the piping it goes through and the type of bottle that it lives in to ensure that the molecular structure of the water stays intact from the minute it comes to the source to the minute it goes into your body. If you're interested in buying Splendor Water for yourself, you can order it online at splendorwater.com. And you know, we all love to save some coins. So use my code MindfulPlate10 and get yourself 10% off your next order. All right, you all, I hope now you know how much water you should be drinking and also what type of water you should be drinking. Until next time, you all, drink well and be well. Take care.